Welcome to the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast, where we delve into the minds of elite athletes and coaches to uncover secrets behind their success. I'm your host, Coach Geris, former University wrestling coach, former NC2A D1 wrestler, national champion, Olympic trials medalist, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, and world team coach in grappling, and author. Join me as we explore the realms of training, mindset, goal setting, overcoming adversity, and various coaching methodologies in the world of sports. Get ready to be inspired and motivated as we learn from the best in the game on our journey to achieving greatness. Today's guest is an American wrestler, Skylar Grote. She is a 2022 U.S. Open champion, a 2022 Senior Pan Am champion. She's a 2022 Mateo Pelican Ranking Series champion, a 2023 Bill Farrell Silver medalist, and a 2024 Olympic Trials qualifier. Please welcome her to the show. Skylar, welcome to the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We got your name from an Olympian. You were highly recommended.
Yeah, thank you. And that was my girl, Hannah Taylor, right?
Yeah. I asked, I put a shout out on the Instagram and to see if anybody had any recommendations for the show, and your name popped up there, highly recommended by 2024 Olympia Hannah Taylor. Yes. Apparently she was a teammate of yours.
Yeah. I went to Brock for college, so I was teammates with her for about 3 years. So, and she'll be like the maid of honor at my wedding. She's my best friend. So, yep.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, like always, I usually start off asking our guests on how they got into wrestling. It's kind of a different sport, especially for females. Back in my day when I was wrestling, we didn't have a girls wrestling team. Actually, in fact, girls weren't wrestling when I was wrestling. How did you get started? And tell us a little bit about that. And maybe if there was any resistance.
Yeah, so I first saw the sport when I was about 5 years old. I saw my dad and his friend kind of wrestling around in our living room, and I said to my dad, like, I kind of want to do that because I didn't know what they were doing, but they were having fun, and so I was really intrigued by it. And my dad wrestled for Cornell in college, and then he was an alternate for the Olympics. He had a deep history in the sport, and he talked to my mom about it, and they decided that I was a little too young at 5 to put me in the sport. So they waited a couple of years, and then they came to me when I was about 8, and they said, we signed you up for wrestling. My sister and I always used to fight because we're like a year and a half apart, so we would always wrestle each other and pull each other's hair. So they were like, we're going to put you into wrestling. We think that you both will be good at it. They put my sister in it as well. And at that time, I said to them, like, I don't want to wrestle anymore. Like, that was a fleeting thought. But they said, you're going to do it for a year. And if you don't like it, then, you can quit. And so that was kind of the deal that they made with me. And so I said, okay. And I went into it with a very negative like attitude. I was like, there's no way I'm going to continue doing this. Like, I'm going to hate it. Like, I don't want to wrestle. But I loved it, and I was really good at it. And here I am, 18 years later, still wrestling. So that's kind of how I got into the sport. And to answer the question of, did I get resistance? I totally did. I was only one of 3 girls on my elementary team, including my sister. So there was a lot of resistance that I got from teammates, parents of teammates, coaches from other teams, parents of other teams. And that was a really difficult thing to handle as a young child who was just trying to do something that they loved. It was very hard to always hear negativity and always get negative comments, that it often made me question whether I wanted to continue to do the sport just because of the negative backlash that I got. And so it's really exciting to see women's wrestling on the rise, and to see so many people changing their perspective and changing their opinions on women's wrestling, and just be more supportive and open to the sport as a whole.
Mm. Now, can I ask you about some of the things that were said and and did they motivate you, or how did they how did you internalize them?
Yeah, I think that I wish I could say that like I used it as motivation, but I think I have a lot of sympathy for my 10-year-old self that couldn't, take those negative words and use it as motivation, because I think when you're a young child and, even as an adult, I struggle with it too. I want to please people, right? I want people to like me. And so especially at that age, I wanted to be accepted and I wanted to please people. So I don't think I used it as motivation. Like, I think a little bit in me was kind of like, oh, I'm going to prove them wrong. But there was also a large part of me that, kind of questioned, like, are they right? Like, should I not be doing this? And yeah, I think just as a young child, it's so hard to see the other side when you have so many people just kind of like hating on you constantly.
Mm. And could you remember any of the phrases that they utilized to, I guess, to that they would say to you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I could just tell some of the energy when I would wrestle some kids on my team, like the parents just their energy was just like, I don't want my son, wrestling with her. And the parents like wouldn't really talk to my parents, wouldn't really be nice to my parents, wouldn't be nice to me, wouldn't talk to me. So it was a lot of like, I felt that energy. But I mean, I also had parents from other teams. I had one mother in particular telling her son to like pull my hair because I would have to like wear a head cap. So she was like yelling at her son mid match, which is like the most
Mm.
I hate to say it, but it was like Jersey on display, because I'm from New Jersey, but it just seemed like it was just bizarre, it's and wrestling in Jersey can be bizarre sometimes. But I had one mother just like screaming like pull her hair, like mid match. And of course I heard it, and of course it distracted me. I had another kid like punch me across the face. I had a ref once take off a point before I even started the match because I had hair tie on my wrist. And you're not supposed to have like hair ties on your wrist, but like I'm a female wrestler, so I need it in order to perform. And he took a point away from me before I even started the match, which is like totally unfair, instead of just saying like, hey, can you take that off? So yeah, there was just like a lot of hate that I had to deal with. But in retrospect, there was a lot of positivity and I had a lot of people on my side as well. And I had a lot of people encouraging me and thought it was super cool that I was able to compete with the guys. And so even though there was a lot of negativity, there was also a lot of positivity. And I think at the time I only focused on the negative because I was so young and because I wanted to people please. But now looking back on it, there are a lot of people that were on my side. So
That's awesome. Not awesome that you went through that, but awesome that there's people on your side. I coach youth wrestling, and I do see that sometimes in not to that extent, because I think wrestling has evolved, maybe from that time, but I do still see it in the room where these young kids, and they're young. They're what I coach is, under 12, 8 at the youngest, but they don't want to wrestle with the younger girls. So it's tough, and sometimes the girls don't want to wrestle with the boys either, right? So it's tough to kind
yeah.
of find that. But I'm horrified to hear that you had to go through that. That's terrible. I'm glad things have evolved. You've kind of paved the way for the younger generation. So thank you for for helping out with that in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I also think I look back with a little bit of sympathy, because, as a society, we kind of made it like the worst case scenario if a guy lost to a girl, right? We kind of like projected that onto children. And so, I look back and I kind of like don't blame the young boys that hated wrestling me and, hated competing against me, because it was just kind of like a reflection of what they were taught from their parents. Because no 8-year-old really can decide that for themselves, right? So it's kind of like society projecting that onto them. And so it's kind of an unfortunate situation, but it's really great to have, individuals that have grown now and kind of have evolved and see, that women can be successful in the sport and that women and girls are capable of beating men and that it's it shouldn't be looked at as a threat. So I think that we've come a long way as a society in respecting women and girls, and especially women and girls in the sport of wrestling.
Awesome. One of the things I wanted you touched on earlier was your father and wrestling. Um,
Mhm.
of course, I was in the similar situation like yourself. My father wrestled. I didn't really have a choice. Um, I say it that way, but I guess I probably did. But how was dad growing up? Was he coaching you? Was he offering you tidbits here and there? How was his support in your corner?
Yeah, my dad grew up like coaching me a little bit. I mean, for the most part, on the elementary, middle school, high school level, like he let my coaches coach me for the most part. He would definitely, give his 2 cents here and there. But as a senior level athlete, we have just kind of found that it's better to be separated and to separate our relationship from coach and father. And that's just kind of how it is. He just has a lot of anxiety when I compete, and it doesn't put me in the best frame of mind feeling that energy. And I know that he wants the best for me, and I respect him and his input, but I think that I just compete better when he's in the stands. And I think that he's learned too that that's true. But he's a great father, and I listen to him when he has, something to say about my wrestling. But I think that for our relationship, and I know that other people have a different relationship with their father in the sport, I think best for us is to separate the two, and it's worked. And yeah, so I try to keep it separated. I like it separated. I want dad to be dad and my coach to be coach. It's just healthier in that sense for me. And it's been working. So we just kind of have, you know, kept that relationship.
I don't think anybody's going to fault you, especially myself. That's great.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it took time. It took time though. Like this did not happen overnight. I think that he wanted to be very, very involved in my wrestling, and I think we just realized it was better not to go that route. But it definitely took time. It took, having conversations and having respect, like me respecting him, but also him respecting me and like what I want. And I think as parents, you really need to respect what your kid wants. If we're looking at it from the perspective of this is my child's career, and at the end of the day, if it's what your kid wants and it's their career, then you should listen to what they want. And my dad has done a very good job of hearing me out and listening to what works best for me.
mhm. And let's talk about mom, her involvement. I guess there's wrestling. Did she wrestle at all, or did she? She. What was her like? Oh, my girl's gonna wrestle. What was her thoughts? I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because one, I have the best parents in the world, and I truly believe that. But it's so insane to me that they were in a time where women were not respected in combat sports, and not for 1 second did they think, Skylar doesn't belong in wrestling. It's just kind of insane that they always have maintained that perspective and that opinion. And um I think that they just kind of have the mindset of, women can do anything they put their mind to. And I think that both of my parents see women and men as human beings at the end of the day, and they don't, see a separation, or think that women and men should be treated differently. And so it's, yeah, my dad just looked at me as, someone, a human being that wanted to wrestle, a little human being that wanted to wrestle because it brought her joy. And he didn't even look at, she's a girl, she shouldn't be doing this. And my mom followed the same mindset. And they're just both two strong individuals who know who they are. And I just think it's incredible that, yeah, they just never had doubts, and they were always encouraging me to kind of power through the negativity.
That's great. Well, Having a great support system at home and not putting limitations on the individual is so helpful because it can be harmful, like you said. And of course, if you wanted to do something, you probably would have done it anyways. Sounds like you're a strong-willed individual just from this conversation we're having now. I wanted to talk about Jersey. You were there. That's where you were born and raised, I'm assuming.
Yep, Jersey girl.
And you're currently in Colorado Springs.
Yep,
What are
correct.
what are you doing in Colorado Springs?
Yeah, so I was in Oregon before this, and I got my master's in marketing at Oregon State while I was training at their RTC. And last summer in June, I just realized that that area was not for me anymore, and I wanted to be somewhere where I had more people my age and pursuing the same goal as mine. And I just needed a change. And so I thought that the Olympic Training Center would be a good place to be the year before, the Olympics. And I would have, partners around my weight. That was a big thing because I went up a couple weight classes and I wasn't used to wrestling bigger bodies. And I knew that at the OTC I would have a lot of partners. And so that was a big reasoning in coming here. And Terry Steiner's a great coach, and I always wanted to learn more from him. So that was another big, you know, um, plus to coming to Colorado Springs. And Colorado's beautiful, so it was just an opportunity to live in another state. And I'm in my 20s, so it's kind of like I might as well, move every year to a different state, because, I won't get this opportunity eventually. And so I've kind of just embraced moving a lot. I think I've moved 5 times in the last 6 years. So I've just it's kind of become a way of life. But no, I'm really, really happy that I moved to Colorado. I've enjoyed my experience so far. It's been a great chapter to my life. I've made really good friends here. I have great partners. I have great coaches. I have all the resources I could possibly need going into the Olympic trials in 2 weeks. So it was a good move for me.
Let's talk about the Olympic trials. Let's talk about the qualifying process because some of our listeners are Canadian, and we have a different kind of qualifying process here, where we just hold the Olympic qualifiers and then they qualify to their weight classes. How does it work for you guys down south of the border there?
Yeah, so qualifying the weights is obviously the same as Canada. You have to qualify each Olympic weight. And so we send individuals before the Olympic trials, which you guys, I know you have your Olympic trials and then you send the athletes to go qualify the weight. So they're fighting for their spot. But essentially, for the Olympic trials process, is if you're a world medalist from last year, you sit out into the finals of the Olympic trials this year. And then also, if you qualified the weight, then you also sit out to the finals of the Olympic trials this year. And then everybody else has to go through a series of tournaments to even just qualify for the Olympic trials. So we have like the Bill Farrell, you can qualify. We have senior nationals where you have to take top five. And then we have a last chance qualifier where you have to take first place. And then I know some of the college tournaments, if you win that, you also qualify for the Olympic trials. So we have about 14 people per weight at the Olympic trials. And at a lot of weights, there's somebody sitting out until the finals. So we have like a mini tournament of the 13 other people, and whoever comes out on top of that mini tournament the day before meets the person sitting out in the finals, if someone's sitting out into the finals for your weight class.
Hmm.
So
And
for my weight class, Adeline's sitting out because she medaled at the Worlds last year. So I'll have to win the mini tournament before to meet her.
okay, so you've qualified. Where did you qualify?
I qualified at senior nationals. I took third at senior nationals, so that qualified me.
Okay. And preparing for senior nationals, where did you do that? You were at the Olympic training camp.
Yeah, yep, I was. Our senior nationals was in December. So I had been here for uh I don't know, 5 months before that. So I was able to, get settled here, train. I had a good senior nationals. I lost a close one in the semifinals because I got crotch thrown for four, which I shouldn't have, but it's okay. It was a learning process, and coming back for third, it took a lot of grit, and I think that maybe I needed that at that time in my life to, put a loss behind me and come back and get third, which isn't easy to do. So, it all happens for a reason, in my opinion.
Hmm. And sorry, you said you had a tough time that loss. Is it haunted you ever since?
I don't really look at my losses as haunting me anymore. I think that's a horrible way to live life if you're gonna, harp on a loss. I think it's wild to me that people like it still stings them years later because I don't really view wrestling like that anymore. I don't view wrestling as like life or death. It's just something I do, and it doesn't define me. And I think that losing shouldn't always be looked at as a negative. Like, of course, I want to win. Don't get me wrong. I'm very competitive. I love winning. Winning's the goal, but it's more about the person and the wrestler that's developing to win. And how many times can I get knocked down and still stand up? And that was a time that I got knocked down, and my only answer to that was getting back up. And I think that that should define me, that I don't give up, and that I'm going to come back and be better and do better. And I put value in that part of me. I don't put value in my wins and my losses. I put value in how I respond to situations, and I put my value into, am I becoming a better person? Am I becoming a smarter person? Am I becoming, a wiser person? Not just in wrestling, but in life. Am I making the same mistake in life over and over and not learning my lesson? And, so if I go into that match and I lose that match, and then I don't come back and fix the thing that I lost on, if I get crutch thrown again for four, my next competition against this girl, then yeah, I'm going to be a little upset, but more upset that maybe I didn't practice it as much as I should have in my training. So that's just kind of the outlook I have.
No, and that's the answer I was looking for. Tell you the truth, I think I articulated the question a little word,
No, that's okay.
sort of haunting, but I guess something that would have motivated you to, and I think with every loss, with every loss we have, if you are a competitor, you're going to deconstruct, well, what was done, what happened, and then you'll go back to the drawing board. I'm sure your coaching staff put you through a few grinding moments after that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I shouldn't have lost, but I'm not gonna harp on it. It happened, I had to move on from it. But yeah, it definitely motivates me to do better. And I'm excited because I think I have made strides since that loss, and I think I have gotten better. And so I'm really excited to put that on display.
Awesome. And is there any, sorry, let's go back because I'm sure there's, again, we're a Canadian show, but some of our Canadian listeners are going to want to know how the hell did she get to Brock? Like,
Yeah.
let's answer that story. You're an American, you're from Jersey, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
and you ended up in St. Catharines, Ontario to wrestle for Marty Calder.
Yep.
How?
Yeah, it's a bizarre story. So women's wrestling was not that big on the college level when I was deciding to go to school. And so I went to Blair Academy, which is a very prestigious high school, and a lot of my friends were going Division 1 and to Ivy League schools and to, the best colleges in the nation. And that bothered me because I felt like I was deserving of that too. And it was just kind of unfortunate because there were no schools that were really strong academically that had women's wrestling. And so it was a huge decision for me to put my education first or to put wrestling first. And I just felt like at that point in my life, I wanted to put my academics first because I worked so hard. And, Blair Academy kind of stresses that, like putting your academics before wrestling because you're going to have a life after wrestling. And so I decided to go to the best school that I got into. I only applied to two colleges, and that was Penn State and Lafayette in Easton, Pennsylvania. And so I went to Lafayette because I got an early decision there. And I just thought that, I could wrestle with a couple of the boys on their club team. And then I could go to my club, which was an hour away. But it just became too hard on me. I was in 4 classes. My day started at like 7 a.m. and I didn't go to sleep till like 12 or 1 because I just worked really hard in school, and the school was academically very challenging. And then on top of that, I was driving an hour to practice, practicing for 2 hours, and then driving an hour home. So it was like 4 hours out of my day. And on top of that, I had classes. And on top of that, I had studying to do. So I knew that I needed to make a change. And so I told my parents, like, if I want to make an Olympic team one day, like I need a team, I need coaches that are devoted to me. And, it's not working out here anymore. And I'm pretty miserable because I miss wrestling and I miss, having the team environment and having a coach willing to, help me achieve my goals. And so my dad talked to a couple of his friends and said, like, hey, this is the situation. I don't know what to do for her, given the opportunities out there. And I guess he had a friend that suggested that I look at school in Canada because they were academically a little better than the schools in the US at the time that had women's wrestling. And, they said Canadian women's wrestling is pretty good. So, maybe go there and look. And so we set up visits at Guelph and Brock. And so I went to Guelph first, and I liked it. The school is big. I wanted a big school. So I had a good visit, but then when I went to Brock and I just got the crap beat out of me for 3 days straight, and I was surrounded by an Olympian here and a world team member here, an Olympian here, I just like knew that, this is the place that I need to be at. And I knew that if I wanted to get better at wrestling, like that's where I needed to be. And I didn't know any other room in the United States that had 7 world and Olympic, members just wrestling with you. So I just said, like this is where I need to be. And so I transferred to Brock, and I had an amazing 3 years at Brock. I wrestled for Marty, and yeah, it was great. I think I made my biggest strides in wrestling there for sure.
And was Tanya there as well?
Tanya was there as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Yep.
yeah, there's some selling points there. That's that's good. Yeah, iron sharpens iron. It's an old saying that I heard from actually a friend of mine that lived down in the Oregon area, Matt Lindland. I don't know if you know that name. He's no stranger from the Olympic training camp. He was a silver medalist for the United States. He's been on the podcast before. But yeah, finding the right training environment is so important if you want to get, you want to get any farther in your sport. I mean, you could have easily picked, or stayed where you were and just tried to grow on your own, but you challenge yourself. Is that something that you do not only in sport, but also academically and personally? Do you challenge yourself other than the sport of wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really good to surround yourself with people that challenge you and, um, make you a better person. I don't know. I'm a big believer in energy and like positive and negative energy. So I just try to surround myself with people that have positive energy and, give off positive energy to me because I think it makes me a happier and better person. And I want to be challenged academically. I want to be challenged athletically. I want to be challenged in other aspects of my life. I feel like I am a very, open-minded person, and I love to hear other people's perspectives. And I saw a quote the other day, and it was like, if you're the same person that you were last year, like you have a problem. And I just love that so much because I look at myself from last year and I'm just such a different person. My opinions have changed, my perspectives have changed. At the core, I'm still very much Skylar Grote and who I've always been, but there's been pieces of me that have changed and have evolved. And I think that that quote is just so true because you should always want to improve. You should always want to learn. You should always want to educate yourself further. And yeah, I do a lot of reading. I love to read. I love to learn. about my one passion is to like learn about the brain. I'm just like all of a sudden obsessed with the brain, about psychology and just how our brains work and how habits work and neural pathways and all of those kinds of things. And so I do a lot of research on that and kind of better my wrestling game and better my game as a person, I guess. I take a lot of pride in that. So yeah, to answer your question, your environment's super important, and you are who you hang out with. And I used to get so mad at my parents for saying that to me when I was younger. Like, that's not true. Like, you're not who you hang out with. Like, but you are. And like, honestly, science proves that too. You pick up mannerisms and you pick up habits from the people around you, and it's not even like conscious, it's in your subconscious. And so I've learned that maybe the hard way, but you are who you hang out with. And so I make a um I've made had to make hard decisions to get rid of some people in my life, and make sure that I'm surrounding myself with good, like-minded people.
Hmm. I think if I remember right, the social learning theory comes into mind when you're talking about that, and how you can your environment can influence who you become.
Yeah.
I've been affected by that myself through my profession, and I've had to actually just kind of take a seat back and take a look and say, okay, well, you know what, we we gotta take a look at things through a different lens, which can be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you put the effort in, you can see some wonderful changes. One of the things that you're talking about there is psychology, and I want to talk to you about maybe some sports psychology. And I just read a book by Greg Harden, who was the University of Michigan's. I guess he's the what was his title? It was athletic counselor or something like that. But listening to him talk about, he said he could never, I'm not gonna, if you come to my office, I'm not gonna guarantee you a starting spot. I'm not gonna guarantee you, time on the field. What I will guarantee you is you will become a person that knows yourself better, knows what you can do and what your potential is. Is there somebody in your life, or is there something that you do to bring forth that kind of mindset?
Yeah, I have a sports psych that I meet with, on a weekly basis as I get closer to competition, and at least once a month when I'm not close to competition. And that has really broadened my horizons on how I talk to myself and what I'm saying to myself. And I think a big thing is awareness. And I lived so long of my life just not being aware of my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions. And I'd say that was kind of my reality until 25. I don't know if it has anything to do with my frontal lobe developing, but probably. Because I know your frontal lobe develops at 25, and I might sound crazy for saying this, but I did. I felt like a different person when I turned 25. Like, I felt like I just was able to, control my feelings and emotions more, and really look at my thoughts objectively, and, not judge myself for being so critical on myself, but realizing that like I needed to change. My internal dialogue was negative probably 99% of the time. And I would say that my internal dialogue is negative probably 1% of the time now. And so I totally changed in that aspect, and I'm sure it has to do with my brain developing, but I also think that it was a lot of the mental work that I did with my sports psych, and just viewing the world a little differently. And so i I'm a big believer that we don't really have control over most things, and I know that's a very controversial topic, and I'm not saying that we don't have control over everything, but I think that we're kind of a product of our environment, and a product of many things. And I would argue that we don't always have control over those things. But I think that once you're aware of your environment, and once you're aware of how you think, and once you're aware of those things, then you do have more control. But, kind of finding that awareness takes a lot of time. And I think some people never become aware. And so I'm just really grateful that I have this newfound awareness, that I'm able to evaluate myself and understand myself, and know the things that make up me as a person, because it has allowed me to quote unquote control my life a little better. So yeah.
That, you know what, years and years ago, where people would say, "Oh, you're going to see a sports psychologist. That's ridiculous. Why do you need that sort of thing?" Of course, more and more schools are supporting that. Athletic, countries are putting them on staff, their national teams. When you first stepped into the room to now, or to when the first time you utilized or you started to see that sort of transformation yourself, that first time you stepped on the mat, how was it for you?
Yeah, I think it was kind of like a revolution in my wrestling career. I mean, before I would just be so afraid to lose. And if I lost, then I'd be upset for days on end. And that's how I viewed wrestling. And that's how I viewed, the sport. And I was miserable if I lost, and I was happy if I won. And so it was my mood and my emotions and my feelings were so dependent on winning and losing. And I'm a happy person if I win, and I'm a miserable person if I lose. And now I just don't see it that way, and I don't think about it that way. And it was just a matter of a mindset change, like I'm deserving of everything that I was deserving of before I lose. And I have that mindset now, and it's a lot more freeing. And I know that I'm a worthy person, and I know that I'm a good friend and a good daughter and a good human being regardless of, winning and losing. And so I think that mindset change has just made me a happier person and a more positive person. And so I'm very grateful that I was able to change, that perspective. And like I said, I do a lot of studying on the brain. So those neural pathways of thinking that way were really strong. And it took a lot of thinking the opposite way to undo those neural pathways and to create new ones. And so I did the work, and I'm really happy I did the work, because I am a happier human being. So.
That's awesome. Glad to hear that. Um, those, like the times when you do feel, or you let that mindset creep back in, how do you fight it?
Yeah, I think just reminding myself of what I value. I think sometimes, like, feelings and emotions, I was having this conversation with my friend today. Feelings and emotions are, I would argue, the most powerful thing, that a human experiences, right? And I think sometimes that they blur our values. And so I think it's really important to have like a list of what you value, and having this list kind of like brings you back. My sports psych likes to talk about bringing yourself back to your path, right? So it's like you have a path, you have your values, and sometimes, feelings and emotions make us, kind of get off that path. But like, how do we bring ourselves back to that path? And I think that just reminding yourself of the things you value, can help you to come back on that path. Because I think just, things people say or the environment or whatever, they all dictate our feelings and our emotions, which can deter us from, our purpose and our being.
Hmm. As I'm sitting here listening to you talk, one of the things that popped in my head is, like, I haven't asked you about specific tournaments that well, I guess more memorable tournaments that you may have come across or performed in, whether it's starting at, we talked about your grade school level, the high school. You wrestled in high school too. We didn't talk about that. How was that? You talked in the beginning about how it was a little tumultuous in the beginning, and this is when you were 8 years old. When you got to high school, did it get any better, or was it, it just?
Yeah, no, I went to Blair Academy, and Blair was like super supportive of my wrestling career. And I've had multiple times in my wrestling career where I was like, I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm done with this sport, more times than I would like to admit. But it was just because things are really hard as a female wrestler in this sport. I know that they're getting easier, but they were really, really hard, and it was hard on me emotionally. And so before I went to Blair Academy, which is the best high school wrestling program in the country, told my parents that I wasn't going to wrestle there because it's extremely intimidating. Like, I'm a 13-year-old girl going into a high school room with the best kids in the country who are probably all going D1. Like, how am I going to survive, essentially? Like, how's a 13-year-old girl going to deal with that? And especially, boys that age aren't the nicest, as I'm sure you know. So, that was also kind of like a threat to me. And my coach, my freshman and my sophomore year at Blair, before I went there, he heard that I didn't want to wrestle, and he knew I had wrestled, in middle school at the school in town. Him and my mom kind of planned a meeting, I guess, and sat me down and asked me, why don't you want to wrestle here? What are your reasons? And essentially, he was like, your reasons aren't good enough to not wrestle. Like, we're going to take care of you. We're going to support you. And, if again, like, if you don't want to do it after the first year, whatever, but like, at least give your freshman year a try. And so I did it, and it was not rainbows and butterflies. Like, it was extremely difficult. I would just remember I came from volleyball because you had to do 3 sports a year at Blair to they just did it to keep kids, out of trouble. And so I did volleyball my first year, which I had never played volleyball. So I was playing volleyball, and then I went right into wrestling. And after your freshman year, you're allowed to do wrestling as one of your sports in the fall. And so but it was my freshman year, so I couldn't. And so I went from volleyball practice to that. And I remember my first practice, like, wanting to vomit so badly. Like, I was just exhausted. Like, it was like the hardest practice of my life. It was like 3 hours long. I'm a 13, 14-year-old girl, in a room full of the best guys in the country. I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, I cannot do this. And I just remember like going home crying, saying like, this is not for me. This is so hard. And then, my parents just always like talked me down and out of those things. They would just be like, Skylar, you just came from volleyball. Like, relax, you're going to get in shape eventually. Like, volleyball shape is not the same as wrestling. And so they would always, talk some reason into me. So I'm very fortunate for that. But yeah, that freshman year, it was brutal. I just remember being so exhausted all the time from the practices. I remember just getting the crap beat out of me. I remember, the boys on the team, when it would be like, okay, find a new partner, like, they'd all like look away from me and walk away from me and not want to go with me. And so, I actually had to like tell one of the coaches, like, hey, you have to like force these boys to go with me. Like, you have to put them with me because they will not go with me willingly. And it makes it really uncomfortable for me because I'm trying to wrestle them and they're walking away from me. And so we got to the point where the coach would just be like, hey, blah, 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 you're going with Skylar. Hey, you're going with Skylar, this go. And I really needed someone to do that for me. And so the coaches kind of caught on and started handling my situation like that. And so it became better. But I know that like it was all a learning experience, right? It was a learning experience for me. It was a learning experience for my coaches. Like, they had never had a girl really on the team. And so we're all just learning. And so I think that they did a really good job of that. They really did. They supported me. They were never negative. They did the best that they could. And I'm really fortunate that I had that experience at Blair.
Hmm. I can tell you, I'm still seeing that kind of stuff happen in my wrestling room where they, like we talked about it before, it still is happening. But again, I hope when coaches hear stuff like this, or they, when they're watching a podcast and they realize, well, maybe I should smarten up. Maybe I should watch for that sort of stuff. So thank you for touching on that as well. And making it, it's always been, I've been always cognizant of it because I have girls. So, even watching, them in rugby, and, we had our girls in co-ed rugby, and the boys wouldn't pass to the girls. And, of course, my daughter's got an attitude, and she gave it back real quick. So
That's good.
yeah, I will give her that. But I mean, she had to grow that attitude because of that. You growing up, did you get a little bit of an attitude because that was going on, or
Um, I mean, I guess like to a certain degree. I mean, if you ask me now if I have an attitude, absolutely. Like I call people out all the time. I'm a very strong-willed woman. I think back then I was a little more timid and I didn't really speak my mind because I didn't like being judged all the time. I mean, when you're constantly judged, you kind of get tired of it. And so I think that I kind of conformed to being a little more passive, but I actually so my dad is, I always say, like, he's so nice you could like shoot him in the foot and like he'd still be your friend. And then my mom is like you get on her bad side and she will never talk to you again. And so I think I've like learned a lot from my mom, to be honest, because she just like sticks her ground and she doesn't let people walk all over her. And I think in life, like, you have to have that attitude because people, will walk all over you. And so I think it took me a little later in life to adopt her attitude, but I don't think I can go back now. Like I really don't. Like I think there's just like so much power in, sticking your ground and speaking your mind and not letting people step all over you.
hmm and is the sport helped you with that attitude too?
Yeah, I think that it has. I think, one of my coaches said to me one time, you have to be a little selfish in this sport. Because I think he noticed that I wasn't being selfish and that I was a people pleaser and I always wanted to, do things for other people and make sure other people were comfortable before myself. And he said to me, like, this is a selfish sport. Like you need to start being a little more selfish. And I think that's true a little bit. But I still think that you can be a good person and still be selfish. I think that you can still care about other people while still being selfish. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And I think that I try my best to be both of those people. I don't think you have to be one or the other. I think that both can coexist. And so I try my best to do that.
Awesome. I want to talk to you a little bit about prepping for the Olympic qualifiers. What are you, or Olympic trials? What are you doing to get ready for that mindset physically? Have you changed your routine? Have you started studying your opponents? What is the mapping process for you?
Yeah, so we have 6 mat practices a week, and then we have 3 lifts. And so I'm just making sure that I'm really focused and dialed into those, 9 workouts. And then on top of that, I do 30 minutes of cardio around 5 or 6 days a week on top of that, because one thing I won't be as tired at the Olympic trials, and I've made that promise to myself. And so I just want to be in the best physical shape that I've been in a while. So that's one of my goals. And so I've just been diligent on that. Now that I'm 2 weeks out, I'm a little more diligent on my diet, I'd say. I mostly eat healthy all the time, but I think the next 2 weeks I'm just going to dial in a little bit more on what I'm eating and make sure that it's, mostly good stuff. And then for the mental preparation, I like when I'm doing cardio to do a little more visualization and a little more preparation of like who I might match up with and how I'm going to handle that. That way I deal with it now and not on tournament day. Like, oh, you have blah, blah, blah first. I kind of like put it in my mind now that, as I'm ellipticaling, I'm like, okay, you have blah, blah, blah first match. And like, how am I going to respond to that? And I try to deal with those emotions and those feelings now instead of on tournament day. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear about who they're going to wrestle, and I used to be that way, but I think that now, why wouldn't you want to prepare yourself in advance? I just remember saying to my dad, like, I don't want to prepare, like, I don't want to watch their film, it makes me anxious, or I don't want to know who I'm wrestling. And I think that now I just have a totally different perspective on that. Like, I want to know, like, I want to start preparing now, like, I want to feel those emotions now, I want to feel those feelings now, so that when I get to that time when someone tells me, oh, you have this person first, or this person's on your side of the bracket. It's just like, oh yeah, like I visualized that already. Like I'm comfortable with that already. I know what that person's going to do already. And so I think that comes with time, and it comes with experience, and it comes with confidence. And I just am very fortunate that I'm able to go into this, Olympic trials, being mentally prepared like that. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be nerves. There's going to be, a little bit of fear like that. Those are all natural feelings, but I think that I'm going in with the strongest mindset that I've had in a long time.
And how do you celebrate your successes?
Yeah, I don't really like to see my successes as, winning and losing and all of those things. And I also like to take it day by day. And so um there's just a lot of dialogue going on in my head about the little wins of the day. For example, I was on the elliptical the other day, and I told myself I'm doing 30 minutes of cardio every single day, and I was at like 15 minutes, and I was just like, I wrestled a lot today. Like, I don't need to do 30 minutes. Like, I was on the mat for 2 hours, and then I just like realized I'm like starting to make excuses for myself. And like, I told myself that I was doing 30 minutes of cardio 5 to 6 days a week. And so, um, I had to come back with that voice and be like, no, you're going to feel better if you do this. You're going to feel better about yourself if you just get it over with. And so, I think that that's just like a little win for me. And just doing what you say you're going to do. I think it's just like such an important part of wrestling, an important part of life. And you're like a phony to yourself if you don't do what you tell yourself you're going to do. And there's actually studies on that like your brain starts to figure out that you're a phony yourself. So I think if you say like, hey, I'm doing this, you got to do it. Like you, to
Mhm,
be true to yourself, to be true to your being, like you got to do what you say you're going to do.
mhm,
And you are who like you are what you do, you're not what you say. So I'm a big believer in that.
mhm. You're hitting on a lot of school stuff here. Yeah, you're still in school.
Yeah, well, no, actually, I graduated with my master's in December, so recently done with school. But yeah, I was
Okay.
in school for like 20 years.
Sounds like you're done with it now.
I am done with it. I still answer that I'm in school, so it's
Um,
just, yeah, it was a long time, but I decided that I wanted to get my master's because I was still wrestling, and I'm just not the type of person that can only do one thing. And so I thought it was just a great opportunity to continue my education and continue with wrestling. And so, yeah, now I am graduated with my master's. So.
awesome. And what vocation are you looking to join after I guess well wrestling will never end probably. You'll be coaching or something after that maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I don't really know what's next in store for me. I'm trying to figure that out at the moment. I plan to wrestle until 2028, and then I'm done. That's for sure. There's no if, ands, or buts. I'm done after 2028. I just like want to get on with my life, and I'll be 30 at that point. So I think my body will thank me too for, being done. So, although I mean my body is great, and I don't have many injuries, thank goodness, knock on wood. But I think at 30 I just want to get on with my career, and I have other goals besides wrestling. And although wrestling is a huge aspect of my life, it's not everything, and there's a lot of other things that I want to do. So,
I like to hear that. I was just reading, like I said, that book by Greg Harden, and he said, "Don't let your sport define you." And it sounds like you that's the in case that or that's the case with you is that you have other things planned. You've set a plan in motion. You're doing well, and you've got some goals that you're gonna accomplish. Skylar, I want to thank you for coming on the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast. It's been a pleasure learning about your adventures in wrestling. It's pretty cool actually to sit down and chat with you. I think some of our listeners are going to enjoy your story. You've got to give a lot of insight into your career and how you manipulated the sport of wrestling there. And I love particularly for me what hits home with me is the way you were treated in the beginning, and I'm still seeing some of that happen with our kids. But I think because of what you went through, some of these younger kids aren't going through that extreme that you went through. So I want to thank you for our girls for doing that, for going through that and paving the way for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the least I could do, and I thank the people before me because they had it even harder than I had it. So we're getting better and better, and that's the beauty of life is we can continue to get better. But thank you for having me on. It was a great discussion, and I really appreciate being able to come on.
Thank you for tuning into the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast. I hope you found today's episode insightful and inspiring. Your comments mean the world to us, so don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave comments in the section below. Your feedback fuels our journey to bring you more valuable content and stories from the realm of sports. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries, believing in yourself, and achieving greatness. Thank you for listening.